Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. Wells, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Eric, good morning. I'm doing real well. We had some pretty cool weather here in Santa Fe. It said 9 degrees in town, but I was up on a mountain before sunrise, and I'm sure it was around 4 degrees. And it's about the coldest it's been this year so far. It's cold when it gets that bad.
Yeah, we've got into the single digits here as well. I think I don't know. I think around here it doesn't get that cold that often. We didn't have much snow last year. We got some last week, and we're gonna get some again this coming
Mm.
week. So we'll see. It's like people forget how to drive, but that's a different story for a different day.
Sure.
Um, so do you actually, let me pull up your resume to do a quick intro. As we were chatting beforehand, you can go forever with your resume, so I'll run through it maybe shortly. So I've got U.S. Navy Antarctic Pararescue Team, um, American Academy of Dramatic Arts, you're New York City graduate. You're the owner slash producer and director of a live event production company called Aunahil. Is
You
that
got
pronounced?
it.
There
Good
you go.
man. Good.
You were on a PBS series called Money Hunt, Kayak for a Cause, First Adventure with Purpose with Miles, who's the co-author for your book, which we'll get into as well. You've listed a bunch of hiking adventures, as I'm sure we'll get into as well, through Colorado, New Mexico, um, Deception Peak, lots of mountains in there, and then of course the book, A Line in the Sand with Miles. And was that in a nutshell? Anything you wanna add or expand on?
No, no. I think one kind of led to the other that has all been important that's led up to the most recent, if you want to call it an adventure with purpose, is the book.
So I think this question is, well, it's a very good question, and I've got enough of a memory to be able to pull it up, but because he decided to make it so complicated, I have to go find it.
Mhm.
Um,
We don't want complication.
well,
We make it.
maybe not.
Okay.
Where did it go? I had to pull your resume up as well. Here we go. Oh, is this it? Here we go. And you'll see why I had to pull it up now. Because physics is deterministic and every particle of our body is governed by those same deterministic physical laws, it means that fate must exist. Given that, should this fact change how we think about things such as our interpersonal relationships, governments, laws, taxes, and regulations?
We should absolutely pay attention to our interpersonal relationship, starting inward, working outward. Fate, it's inevitable. It's Alan Watts has a quote, a philosopher, writer, about change, and the only way to manage change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. So I heard a lot about physics, but there's a lot there's a lot more, and it's called metaphysics, and that is the whole concept of a supreme energy that has created us, and it's spiritual, and that we are made spiritual, and we are manifested, mortally.
Yeah. So the guy that asked this question, his episode is not out yet, but it's your answer is very interesting to me because he wrote a book. It's called The Science of Free Will, and he's a particle physicist. So he goes into say basically there's free will in theory doesn't exist because every particle. I'm gonna butcher it. So people listening, when the episode goes out, go listen to him explain it. But free will in theory, every particle within that's made up of every atom that makes us, you can theoretically calculate and predict what each one will do. So therefore, in theory, there should be no free will because you should be able to predict everything. But because there's so many, and he lists out a few other things, that
So
is
many,
actually
so many what?
particles. Like it's
Yeah.
impossible to predict.
Yeah.
And there's a few other things that he mentions. But in practice, everyone has like everyone has free will and it's only possible based on the laws of physics, and he goes into this whole thing and it's super cool. And so at the end of that episode, to your point, he mentioned he was like, I would really like to talk to somebody who's well versed in theology and kind of like have that discussion. And I was like, oh, okay. So when he asked that question, I was like, I might just ask everyone this because it's a very good question. But okay, so you mentioned kind of the metaphysical and the manifestation, um, and kind of how that affects our lives. And the first thing that was on your resume was Antarctic pararescue.
Mhm.
And was this something that, like, when I saw that pop on the resume, the first thing I was like, even before I got into the book and all the rest of the stuff that's super interesting, I was like, how in the world did somebody end up doing that? Was that something that you'd been interested in, or were like because you also were acting and doing some other things when in show entertainment business, and those two things are not really the same. So if I was to ask somebody, hey, what are two things that you like doing? Those are not two things that I would think go together. How did you end up doing that?
Well, I'm from a large family, military family, 6 children within 6 years of age. So there were two sets of twins. One set was born in Texas, one in Oklahoma. I was born in Stuttgart, Germany, and a brother born a year later. So with the military family, started school in South Carolina, ended up in Vermont. And it was a very small town. It was actually 5 towns feeding a high school. My graduating class was 31, 1973. All I wanted to do was leave. I loved Vermont. I skied. My father passed on when we were all very young. So we all learned to manage and learn how to adapt, which is a big word and something that started early and in my life and my siblings' lives. And so had a plan with the Navy, joining the Navy, and it was a plan that didn't work out and something better happened. So I went into the Navy 10 days after high school. Vietnam was over, ended up with a squadron that flew planes for the National Science Foundation in Antarctica or the ice. And sitting in a bar one night drinking 2% beer, which is all they would give people under 21 there. And a guy sitting there, and he had these wings with a parachute in the middle of it. And I was going, "What's that?" He said, "Parachute wings." I said, "For what?" "For the pararescue team." I said, "Where did you get them?" He said, "I earned them. It's a group that's a part of the squadron." "No way." "Yeah." "You want to join? You have to apply, and then you have to pass." Took 6 months, and I got on board with it. I did all the training in California where we were stationed. And when I set foot on the ice in 1974, 75 season, there are seasons in Antarctica. So you've got 4 months of sunlight, basically, 4 or 5 months of sunlight. And where the bay is, the ice is able to handle back then the C-130 ski equipped and helicopters and so forth. And so it was spectacular. We were precision skydivers and we trained in the United States. When we got to Antarctica, we were training with the Kiwis, and the New Zealanders were just phenomenal mountaineers. A good friend that I made while during this training, Gary Ball, went on to meet up with Rob Hall, that was a few years younger than him, and they did the first guys who did the 7 summit in seven months. Anyway, Antarctica, stuck with it, loved it, and came towards the end. I made it known that I wanted to go to college and fly jets. The C-130 pilots had been selected. Everybody's selected for this duty because of its arduousness. I don't know really what criteria they did with me, although I did have a lot of skiing and stuff background. And they all wanted to go to jet school. And these guys, most of them, the pilots, that were flying the C-130s. And so I was hearing a lot of talk about it, being able to fly on an aircraft carrier. It's a long time ago. Since then, of course, we've got Maverick and Top Gun, and we've seen pretty amazing things. That's what I wanted,
Yeah.
to. So I got out of the service.
So when you're joining, I from reading, I wasn't around obviously, but from reading and listening to other people, the kind of general vibe around the country towards the military after Vietnam, during and after Vietnam, was not the best. Did that factor into your decision to join at all? Was there ever like, oh, it doesn't, people don't seem to like it, or were you just like, doesn't matter, this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I wasn't living in New York or a major city, and I was aware of protests very much. But when I joined, Vietnam was finished,
Mm,
and then Cambodia kicked in. And it's very interesting, Eric, you bring this up because I found out what prejudice was about at 18 years old, being a young guy, 18, not a shaved head, but like your haircut. I have more hair on my head now. I mean, I had more hair then afterwards than I do on my head now. But in the beginning, it was just being tagged, going through an airport in a uniform. It was just, there was never a time that someone didn't say warmonger,
mm,
but that's something that I'm aware of, but I'm also aware of how people and their opinions and how maybe they're not really tuned into what they're saying, just like after 9/11, it went on forever, the shock and awe forever. And then like, wait a minute, are we getting retribution here? Or are we, in other words, just mass thought being mesmerized in one direction? And there was, rightfully so, I'm sure for many people, but yeah, I did get grief. And trying to go to Ocean Beach in San Diego, which is a beautiful beach, you know, um, in a Navy town, there was no way to talk to any female.
mm.
It just wouldn't happen. And so I thought that was strange because I always had good friends, you know, always.
Did that affect you in terms of like when you first joined? Did you was part of the idea that you would be in there in the Navy as like a career, or did you always have all these other things that you wanted to do? So I want to ask you that, but I also want to ask the pararescue training. So we can get to like the first question, but then as we go through, I just wanted to not forget. So did that affect your decision making, like going
I
through the
did.
airports or at the beaches and getting kind of the we'll say abuse or the verbal kind of whatever? How did that affect you?
Well, I came in with an intention, and the intention was to become career with a path,
Hmm.
and that path wasn't able to happen. You know, whether it was flying jets or I was going to go into to being a judge advocate, an attorney. And as an enlisted man, I could work with a judge advocate and assistant. And that turned out that no, you can't do that until after you've been in for 5 years. So, and then I started weighing it out. It was just something noted. The prejudice was just noted. And like, I thought it was strange, but there were a lot of strange things going on. There was a lot between blacks and whites, and there was a lot going on, civil unrest. And so I've always felt that everybody has a right to be who they are. And I was shocked that who I wasn't good enough for someone that didn't even know me. And that was
Mm.
something to learn, to have more empathy for other people that are getting, you know, spat upon metaphorically, just for their color of their skin or where they're from, you know.
Did that take some adjusting of your worldview when the first time?
Didn't have a worldview, Eric. I mean, I was a kid.
Yeah,
And
but you still have like just because you're a kid doesn't mean at that time like you don't have things that you think about stuff. Like of course as you grow older you're like I didn't know anything when I was 18 or whatever the age is. But when you're 18 you still think that you know things. Like was that kind of shattering from the perspective of right you don't this didn't even compute as something like you mentioned that somebody would who doesn't even know you would view you as in a negative way. Like, did you have to adjust some things about how you were like framing your own kind of mental view of things, or were you, or like you said, it was just kind of this happened and now I move on.
I stepped away from it. I just,
Mm.
that I couldn't touch. And so it exists. And I thought of my African American brothers in the service and the conversations we had, and that was nothing compared to what people endure with prejudice.
Yeah.
And so it was not, I stuck, when they say it's an old phrase, stick to your guns. It's like, what a strange phrase. But, you know, I kept my focus on what I was doing. And you were talking about the training for the pararescue. There were where I was fully focused on life and death things, not on whether I could impress someone or get a date or, all that kind of thing. And so the military helped me organize my thinking, and it just seemed to fit, a really good fit. I'm not talking about the mission. I was with the National Science Foundation, and with guys, we were doing a service and we were flying international scientists, Danes, French, German, Swedes, Canadian, British, around Antarctica, setting up expeditions. And having the rescue team was important because it was like one and a half planes, how they computed each one year, maybe two planes that have gone down, crashed. It
Hmm.
could different reasons, usually on takeoff in open fields where they're putting scientists in an area that's a lat long. There's no airfield, and they're plowing through sastrugi, which is waves. It's like ocean waves of snow, hard packed snow created by the wind, and they're plowing through that to land and to take off. And that's when things go awry. So the training was parachute training, and back then it was learning how to do a parachute landing fall. Basically, in the end, getting on top of what would be a pickup truck and jumping down and falling and not hurting yourself. But there's a way to do that. This is before the ram air canopies came in, which was really within 2 years when I was
Mm.
there. That's
So
the
talk through
story.
like the application process. So you meet the guy and he's like, "Oh, you got to earn them and you got to apply and pass, of course." But like what is it like to apply and then like first day at the parachute school? Like what's it like? Like what is that whole process like?
It was all in-house.
Hmm.
In-house work. In other words, it was the team, the commander of the team and the chief of the team training, and brought in other people as well in the Navy from outside, guys that actually had been with the Shooting Stars. The Shooting Stars, Navy Shooting Stars was a demo team, parachuting team, way back.
Hmm.
And the Army had the Golden Knights. And we had Blue Angels and Shooting Stars. And at any rate, so the application was literally applying to my department head where I was working, and because it was open to apply, and they looked at my record. I'd already taken a number of tests, the tests, and then it was meeting with why do you want to do this? Are that sort of thing. And I've done a lot of hiking and skiing. I was physically fit, and I was very new with rock climbing and stuff like that. And so I was really much very in line with it. And so they accepted me, and then it was training. It was getting the wings and getting first aid training and then getting specialized training for the ice. This is not like the Air Force pararescue team. This is
Hmm.
very specifically Antarctica and dealing with the crevasses, the glaciers, the polar plateau, the cold, and being able to skydive in, cargo drop a container that has all the equipment on it, knowing exactly how to work all the equipment. We had a doctor and we had a hospital corpsman that was a part of the team. So they trained us medically.
Mm.
Anything, a lot of it was it's extreme conditions, but the practice is the same as first aid. There's
Okay,
just certain
gotcha.
there's just certain things, but first aid along with the same with I've been ski patrol. Now I wasn't national ski patrol because I left at 18. I didn't apply for it, but I was working that, so I knew how to splint and how colds and toboggans and hauling people, and so it was much more um, advanced. The training was more advanced in the service, and
That
it
makes
was.
sense.
It was epic, Eric.
Yeah.
There wasn't a day. I mean, when I got towards the end and I knew my CO, and he was so nice, and I had done very well. He said, you're in the 1% of, anyway, I did well, and I was recognized for specific things that I did. I don't need to get into it, but they have Sailor of the Quarter, all outfits do, and big. So I hit that mark and other marks and commendations, individual commendation.
Hmm.
And so when I said, Commander, I want to fly jets. He said, I'll put you anywhere. I said, I want to fly jets. He said, I know that, son, and that's not possible. And I'd heard, but I hadn't heard it directly from anyone. He said, let's just go. I know you ski, all the things you do. I can put you on a desk in Austria. I said, no, sir. I would like to work a pattern to fly jets. He said, your eyes are bad, and they are even today. It's the same eyes. And you're 6'3". And back then, those were just like two major things.
Mm.
He didn't have corrective lensic, stuff for eyes or anything like that. You had to be 20/20, pure and simple. And it was better to be below 6 feet tall. The Blue Angels, we did fortunately, it was just fabulous. Did an air show with the Blue Angels. We were the opening act, and it wasn't like you see today, but it was impressive. People loved it. We had canisters of smoke on our ankles and strings tied to our thighs and jump out and just, we had it set up to where we would fly to and do and twirl and yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was with the Blue Angels. And afterwards we went to a reception with them. And it's true. Those guys weren't, 6'3".
Yeah, they gotta fit in the cockpits. Um, so the first time you see Antarctica, like, is it similar? This might not even be true, but like you hear stories of like when astronauts go up into space and they see Earth and kind of like the awe that they see looking down on Earth. Like the first time you go see Antarctica, is it like what is it? What is it like to see it in person?
Well, the first time I saw it, of course, was in the air.
Uh-huh.
And it was a very brief amount of time because we were flying from New Zealand. New Zealand, Christchurch was the staging base, and it was a flight to the ice. And so by the time they came in close, I don't know exactly, it was the peninsula, probably coming over the peninsula and seeing vast mountains and glaciers and nothing else. It was the purest, brightest, most stark, cold looking. Coming into McMurdo, it's built on volcanic ash from Mount Erebus. and it was industrial almost when it snowed. It doesn't really snow, it blows in snow. It doesn't just, like have falling snow. It just blows in snow around the ice. But stepping out from the C-130 from the darkness, because it's kind of dark in the C-130, there's not. It's
Yeah.
a cargo compartment and was lined up. We had a big tank with fuel in the center of it, bringing food down, it was loaded. And just stepping out was just like, it was piercingly pure, cold, but fresh. I was in the wrong boots. It was the issue boots, the bunny boots. I mean, I don't know why. They're like pneumatic boots. You blow them up a little bit, and that's kind of the insulation, but they're made of rubber and they don't have tread. They didn't have tread on the sole, so you just not really good. But it was wonderful.
So I want to sometimes you hear like for example like that the Nazis had a fascination with Antarctica or that there's like all these I don't even know if conspiracy theories is the exact right term because that's not really what I'm interested in, but you hear these stories about like different bases down there or that people are interested in Antarctica and not that you like would have seen or found anything, but like what was your experience like or can you talk to like the fascination that kind of the lore maybe of like why those stories kind of exist? Like I'm I hear these like tidbits or like little stories and I haven't done any like digging into kind of the research, but there always seems to be some level of fascination with Antarctica. I think partially because it's just largely unknown, but like what were your kind of experiences like down there from that standpoint? Like did you experience things that you're just like mind blowing or like what is it like I'm not really exactly sure what I'm asking, but like it seems like there's some sort of lore about Antarctica. Like, can you speak to that or like some of the experiences that you had that um like that would maybe not necessarily inform, but like you can say like, oh yeah, I can see why that there would be these stories about it or why these people would be interested in it from like somebody who's been there. Does that make sense kind of?
Kind of. I'll tell you, I don't know any conspiracy theories about what you're mentioning. I have seen when I first got down there, there was an expedition being pulled together, and they met in the mess hall, and so it was being led by the French to go inside the crater of Mount Erebus, which is an active volcano, smoke's coming out, and it it was the research. And the only way to get there was through a university or a research institute that's lining up with the National Science Foundation. The Kiwis had a base, Scott Base, which is from Captain Scott, the original guy. There's a hut on the point, Hut Point, that is Scott's hut. And outside the hut, I mean, you can walk around it. They've now done some very careful restoration of the hut. But when I was there in 74, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, the 3 seasons, and there's a seal that's frozen in the next to the door that's been there since he was there. It's the same thing. You look in, you see the cans, you see the tins, there is a fascination with getting to the bottom of the world. The explorers, Amundsen, um, why I'm sorry, Shackleton. The story. See the new documentary on Shackleton. They
Hmm.
found the ship, the Endurance, but it's the ship, the story of the ship that's going after the ship and all the people and what they go through because of the extreme conditions. And there is something fascinating and a draw like a magnet. Also, doing core samples, trying to find out more about our planet. And so doing core samples through, I don't know exactly the thickest ice, but I think it's like 10,000 feet of ice,
It's
you
a lot of
know?
ice.
Yeah. And so they do core samples and they're able to tell what's happened. It's just like doing, it's like an archaeological dig. So it becomes an archaeological point. And I'm certain that people would be looking once they reach terra firma way down below for minerals.
Hmm.
Options are there. We annually made a flights to Vostok or Boktok, Vostok, uh, and did exchange. I mean, it's amazing with a pair of Wrangler jeans or Levi's, what you could people would exchange clothing with each other. You'd come back with a big bearskin hat, for a pair of back then, $25 jeans. Come back with a very elaborate exchange. But that's what I know. So expeditions, and then of course the lure of travel, luring travelers there. It started with Qantas Airline doing the first flight down, charging people a lot of money, people having champagne on the flight, and they're going to fly down around McMurdo. They're not going to go to the South Pole. That's too dangerous for a commercial airline, but they'll go certain areas and then swoop back, and they were paying big dollar for that.
Hmm.
Um, in 1979, I believe it was, a plane went down. There was a mix up. I'm not certain exactly what the problem was because it was contested. Everything was contested, but a plane, a commercial airline with over 238 people crashed into Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is like 40 miles. You can see it from McMurdo. Had I been there, I don't know what the rescue team, if the rescue team had any involvement. I would say very little because it was so controlled and so horrific
Hmm.
to retrieve people and evidence of what happened. It took a long time, and the people that were involved with that particular incident needed help, got a lot of therapy afterwards.
Hmm.
So my point is that it's a harsh area, it's unknown, and forever. I mean, what Colin O'Brady did with an unassisted to the South Pole, what, 4 or 5 years ago, and challenging. I mean, he literally hauled a sled, I don't know how many hundreds of miles, and that's been an attraction, a desire to do that, to get to the South Pole unassisted, to be able to do things. And it started 100 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure in the future we'll end up knowing more as more explorations and expeditions and stuff go down there. But okay, so you've done that, you've been in Antarctica, you go into, so what's the switch into acting and into like show business? Where was that an opportunity that maybe you weren't thinking about, it just came across you somewhere, or was it something that you actively pursued and tried to get into?
I was guided. I did a little acting in high school, and my mother had been very influential in my life. My father, as I had mentioned, passed on about a year and a half after we got to Vermont, and we're all quite young. And my mother just never remarried, and my mother loved him. But she was a strong woman, very beautiful from the Pacific Northwest. We were all in this foreign land called Vermont, and she supported me going to the Navy. I mean, I was trying to figure out whether to go to college or not, and I had no business going to school, college at that time. I was like, "Don't tell me what to do. I'm going out." And saying, "Why don't you read a book?" I don't want to read a book. I want to go. I want to do it. Whatever it is, I'm going to find it. It's just like this, you know,
Hmm.
youth, youth, and a lot of energy. Um, she said afterwards, she said, you know, it was your grandmother that when we saw you and da 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 da, she said it reminded her of her brother and who was an actor. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And she said, you might want to pursue that. It would give you the opportunity to play all these different people that you want to explore anyway and places.
And
So yeah,
how old are you about this time?
22,
Okay.
23, maybe
Yeah.
23. And so I did. Was in Santa Barbara and started acting. Uh, went to the Santa Barbara Community College, which is a phenomenal community school, junior college. And they had a brand new theater that was there. I had a wonderful instructor, and I just excelled. I came alive. I loved it. Decided instead of going to LA to go to New York, trained in New York at the American Academy, got in, trained, was married, um, got out. No agent wanted me in the last days, you know, there they do a showcase and all these people are saying, oh, look what I got, so and so, such and such. And it's like I don't know, it was just awful. I thought I'd really messed up. And because we did little scenes, the person that directed me in the scene called me up and said, oh, so and so is looking for such and such, and you need to meet him. He's in town from St. Louis. And I ended up booking the show. The show was with Ken Howard. Ken Howard ended up being the SAG president. And at the time he was 40, I was young, and it just did well. Did commercials and then did theater in New York. Auditioned for Lee Strasberg's son. Lee Strasberg had just passed on. And John, his son, and John's wife started a repertory theater. I got an audition because I had an agent. It all happened just really fast. And in the middle of the audition for John, he stopped me. He said, "Stop." I'm like, "Oh, I guess I really blew it." And he said, "Come here." Mm-mm-mm. He said, "Tell me about Antarctica." It was about the only thing on my resume because I didn't have any acting experience. You know, they say skills, and I said Antarctica pararescue. And then he said, "So, see you later." I said, "Wait a minute. Did I? What do I?" He said, "You're in. Yeah, you're good. We'll be in touch." So,
That's
but
that's
it
so
was
confusing. You're like, okay, I guess I did it kind of, but also did I do anything?
right. And also, you know, as a resume, I had a crazy picture. It wasn't even, I mean, it wasn't professional. It was interesting. It was okay. I mean, it was fabulous. So, but I couldn't support a family. So that's when my wife and I started production work and we excelled at that. We
Mm.
took all the lessons of, you know, it's kind of Aristotle's poetics, the beginning, middle, and end of writing and storytelling. And we applied that to we were tapped on the shoulder to direct a big show, and it was fabulous. And then again, and then that person told this person, and it was in DC. So we ended up doing events for a foundation in Washington. And from that, over the years, the events were at the Kennedy Center. We
Hmm.
did the house and the orchestra uh, concert hall and did DAR Constitution Hall in town, and then the park Marriott Wardman Park on Connecticut.
All
So
those are lovely venues for
yeah,
sure.
the big and that one's a 300-foot by 90, 99 feet by 299 feet and 33-foot high ceilings and putting in events in there and it always involved music. So we really got involved with bringing in musicians, bands, and then running the foundation. I was asked to. The board of the foundation were several of them were cabinet secretary wives. It was a high profile
Hmm.
organization for kids.
Did you have a moment during all this where, because I can imagine you kind of just for this conversation and the times that we spoke previously, you can would just take this as kind of like, oh, this is just the next thing that I'm doing or pursuing, and we're gonna try our best and hopefully it works out, and you're just gonna keep on keeping on, kind of. But did you ever take a moment, like at some point when a show that you've produced now is live at the Kennedy Center and think like, how did I even end up here from Vermont? Like, did that kind of realization ever kick in, or like, how did that? Because some days or sometimes I'll talk to people on the show, um, who kind of like haven't even it hasn't even hit them what they've accomplished, and at this point in your life, into your 30s, or I guess based on the chronologically, like you've done the pararescue, you've done the acting, you've been in commercials, now you're producing, and now you're at the Kennedy Center. Like, did you ever have a point where it just hits you and you're like, wow, I like, how did I even end up here?
There was never time to think about things like that.
You're just going.
It was on the go. When you're asked to do something at the Kennedy Center, now I didn't even know what it looked like. I just knew Kennedy Center, Lincoln
Hmm.
in New York. And when I walked in there, it was wow. I mean, to say wow is like an
Yeah.
understatement. It's, it's just, it's a lot. Um, it was, I'm being asked, figure it out. And I'm being asked, I knew because I, I'm good with people. I am organized, and that had been seen by one person that passed it on to the next person. And then between my wife, we were very creative. We had wonderful ideas of how to take this piece, and that piece, and go, that is. And then someone says, well, what about this? Yeah. So it's bringing together a concept and then learning about all these designers, light designers, sound designers, set designers, crews, and then finding out their skill sets and understanding the magnitude of what takes what we watch on TV. Or you go to the or you go, these events are one evening events. It's not a play. So at the Kennedy Center, James Earl Jones was the host. I'm directing. He happened to live not far from where we live. My wife went directly to his farm outside of New York. And it just was all the people involved had high candle power and desire to back the foundation that we were working for. And it always involved music and jazz and children performing on stage and costumes and choreographers and band leaders. And so it's just being able to wrap one's head around the organizational chart of that and bring it forth.
Mm.
I learned a lot, learned, you know, and then ended up with people that I could call on so and so from Chicago, so and so from Texas, and I'm doing something on the beach in Connecticut. And it's kayak for a cause, and it's people paddling across the line on the sound. They're raising money. We write checks for the local charities or branches of national local of charities, and then having Dickie Betts perform, or having the Neville Brothers, or having the Wailers on the stage for a party afterwards, and then honor the charities. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful ride that led up to the Middle East, led up to 9/11, after 9/11.
Yeah,
And
so I was about to jump into that. So I see on like in the list of things for the production company that you did a festival in Saudi Arabia. Was that was that prior to 9/11, or like where is that where it was after?
no, it was doing the trek that was actually in we decided we were going to do it and trained in 2005 for a spring 2006 journey from Jeddah going north along the Red Sea up to Aqaba, Jordan, and then going up through Amman into Syria, working our way to Damascus.
Okay.
Following, yeah. So
So, okay, perfect. So, I want to ask one question before we jump into that completely.
yeah,
It says you trained Ewan McGregor, and as a Star Wars fan, I need to ask what that was like interacting with him and getting to meet him and like what he was like.
the if you read the whole piece, what you're seeing there is that our trainer trained Ewan McGregor
Okay.
just before training us. My point being that, I mean, we thought it was fabulous. We had no idea when we hired Jamie, I'll just call him Jamie, who was a retired SAS major
Hmm.
in the Irish Guard. He specialized in borders and checkpoints and kidnap and ransom. That was his specialty. He had a company, he was with a company that provided insurance for people that were going to areas of conflicts.
Okay. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit then.
Sure.
So the idea for this trek through the Middle East, where did this come from? Because this is for people listening, this is kind of the basis for the book, or like at least the beginnings of the basis for the book, which is the whole point of this, and we're almost an hour in, and we haven't even got to it yet. But it's been great.
Are you
So
okay?
like, the,
Time wise, are you
yeah,
doing?
yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, brother. Let's go.
Yeah. So the where did this idea come from? You wanted to trek through the Middle East. Like, was this like where did this come from? And then we can get into the like the preparation and the training with Jamie and kind of the rest of the stuff. But like, where did this idea come from? Was the book first, or was the trek first, or like
Mhm.
what was the kind of genesis for this?
Okay. Uh, Before going to DC, one of the jobs I had was working with Miles. I had met Miles Spencer. Miles is a brilliant, brilliant entrepreneur, and he builds companies. But he came up with an idea to how to source business plans and how to source investments by having a television show. It's like the first reality show.
This is
It's
the Money Hunt
money.
PBS. Okay.
And that was his idea. And he and Cliff were the co-hosts. There would be a mentor on board during the show, half-hour format, and we would vet companies that wanted to be on TV pitching their business.
The original Shark Tank.
It's exactly, but it's was original. And if you look at it, it was brilliant. The set was brilliant. Miles and Cliff were brilliant. We had Jerry Yang from Yahoo, Guy Kawasaki, Candace Carr. We had all the leading successful entrepreneurs as mentors on the show. So two companies pitch, and they're asking for a certain amount of money. They through the grilling that they get in the hot seat, the host and the mentor figure out whether they deserve it or not. And the win on it is they get time with the guest mentor who will help them spend time. It's literally back then it was 1 hour. one
Hmm.
hour of you know of so and so's time totally focused on them. They already knew about the business. Anyway, so
Better have your questions prepared if you only have an hour.
oh man, it was hot. It was great. We ran for 3 seasons. We were all set. We were lining up models for, let's see, we were in Amsterdam, in UK, Germany, all major countries to do models of it. And then the dot-com blew up. So that tells you the time frame. I
Hmm.
went to DC with the work. I'd been doing productions all the time for that organization. And then I was tapped to run as a chief operating officer, their foundation. So now we're back to 2005. I'm finished with the DC job on my way to Golden, Colorado. We decide we're going to blow this out of the water, get out of DC, get out of the East Coast, get into the mountains. Mm.
Yeah.
On the way, talking to Miles, Miles says, we had had a little conversation. He told me about Kayak for a Cause, and it ended it was like the fourth or fifth year that he had been doing it. It started on a bet, two guys betting, hey, can you think we can paddle across Long Island Sound? Yeah. Well, someone said, I'll give you $100. You do it. Well, they did it. Not only did they go across, they came back paddling, kayak. and they never came good on the bet, but other people heard about it and they just said, "You gonna do it again?" He said, "Yeah, well, we'll probably do it again next year. You want to join us?" Yeah. So it's went from 2 to 7 to 13 to 50 to, we worked up to 313
Ooh, that's a lot.
kayaks, and we raised enough money to write 5 checks, $50,000, 5 charities, and have the party and pay for the boats and this and that.
That's awesome.
So Miles and I had a grand time with Money Hunt, and then I was pulled in on Kayak for a Cause. But at the same time, and the Kayak for a Cause was going, he said, Do you know anything about T.E. Lawrence?" I said, "Yeah." "What do you do?" I said, "Yeah." I was going to do a one-man show because I had to have something to fall back on as work. I had met Hal Holbrook, who had done Mark Twain, and I talked with him about doing Lawrence of Arabia as a one-man show, T.E. Lawrence. He thought it was brilliant. I said, "But the guy was 5'5.5." And he said, "Bigger chair." And so the same thing happened with Miles. Miles said, I said, "I can't do that. The guy was 5'5.5." He said, "Get a bigger chair." I said, Hal Holbrook said the same thing. No, no, we'll get someone else to play it. But anyway, we were led to a Broadway producer, multi-Tony Award winning. Don't need to talk her name or stuff like that, but we're still in play. It's been 19 years. We've had 4 different writers to write a play, bringing Lawrence back to life and others to bridge the understanding for how we got into this Middle East mess, because it started after the Paris Peace Conference,
Hmm.
1919.
Yeah.
So with that information, getting a Broadway producer, Miles and I mean, we almost said it at the same time. We gotta go. Yep, gotta go. So we decided. Now it was 2005. We had a Broadway producer. We had been reading. We started getting deep, deep, deep into research on Lawrence and the whole bit. And we used him as our guide on a trek from Jeddah, following the Arab Revolt. The goal in the Arab Revolt was Damascus. And so we followed that with the key places. But in reality, in 2006, then we
Hmm.
went to Home Syria and we went to a few Crusader castles. So that's the reason, as well as we wanted to see what was going on. It was not a safe time to go.
No. Definitely not. I think just to add some context. So the your point about the Paris Peace Conference, there's an episode up on the channel with Dr. Ranjit Singh for those listening. If you want more context into kind of at least the Israel-Palestine specifics of that, we kind of do a wave top level history of the regions starting back in that time. And And then to your point about when you're going in 2005, that's probably the height of the U.S. or close to the height of the U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan. Is that mid 2000s type time frame? Okay, so you decide that you want to go, and then part of the preparation is you get Jamie, your SAS major friend, involved, who Oh yeah, reading. Who had trained? Okay. Anyways, so you get this person involved. What other sort of preparation are you doing at this time? Are you telling people that you want to go? Are people telling you like, are you crazy? Why would you go to that region right now? Like, what's the preparation like to go?
Well, we kept it pretty quiet. So quiet that we didn't tell all the people with Kayak for a Cause. We usually have a party in the spring getting ready to celebrate our July paddle. And it's a big turnout. And that, I mean, we just kept it quiet. We told people that when we were raising money, we used the same model as Kayak for a Cause. We're going to kayak across we're going to go to the Middle East, follow T. Lawrence's path. We're going to give a portion of the money we raise. We need money for this journey because we're working on a play and we want to see get the true temperature of what's going on there on the ground if all the headlines that we've been hearing and every day, it couldn't be true because this is not the kind of people Lawrence talks about in all of his writings. And
Hmm.
see, is this accurate? What is it? And so we identified a foundation, like we always did with Kayak for a Cause. And in this case, it's Seeds of Peace. And it's a foundation that we said we were going to give a portion of the money we raise to Seeds of Peace that supports in a summer camp Israeli and Palestinian kids to come together, high school thought leaders come together and to deal with conflict resolution for the summer in
Hmm.
Maine. And it's been around since '93. We met with the man that started it passed on. We met with Janet Wallach, his wife, who is also a writer. She's written books on Gertrude Bell and other books. And she was thrilled, which opened the door for having uh, Seeds of Peace people in Saudi and Seeds of Peace in Jordan and in Syria and in Israel, former members, former campers from that. And so that's how we got it started. The research was extensive. Physical training was doing 14ers for me. That's when I started doing sunrise summits, solo sunrise summits. I did have a dog. Callie was with me,
Hmm.
Black Lab, and which was very helpful because I realized mountain lions and the things that were around were, I don't know, the dog was very, it was helpful to have the dog to do that in the beginning because it was kind of scary. Trained, researched equipment. We wanted to take one backpack. Tough Book had just Panasonic Tough Books had just come out, so we had the latest Tough Book. Also, a personal locator beacon, and this is all on the advice of Jamie, our uh,
Hmm.
conflict risk management person. The personal locator beacon had just opened up the frequency to 406 megahertz, and so it was capable of triangulating and then signaling back to a specific person and a document and a person of instructions of what to do in case of mortal danger. And in our case, it would be kidnap. We would activate it and toss it or bury it and walk away. Jamie said, Saudi at the time, he was talking just about kidnap and ransom. And he's not talking about all the people. He's just talking about what happens within their borders. You get kidnapped in Saudi, you're gone. It's a political statement. It's not like Colombia with drug
Hmm.
law. They want $1 million, 5 million, whatever they want. You pay it, you get released. Not in Saudi. He said, Jordan, more westernized. Amman, it's the gatekeeper going across to Baghdad. That's where all the black water, triple canopy,
Yep.
Centurion, everybody goes through Amman on the road to Baghdad. Syria, it's getting really, really dicey, but you're good in Jordan. No sooner he said that, I mean, it was a little while later, we were probably 2 weeks out, and two hotels were blown up in Amman, Jordan, from terrorists. One of them we were set to be in. And they weren't totally blown up. They were attacked,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like, this is serious. Are we going to do this? Yeah, we're going to go. And we're going to stay at the hotel. Absolutely. Let's look at it. You know, we've been through 9/11. We've seen the mess. Nothing like that. But we're going to see what it's about. And we've been assured, we know enough people that have said, you'll be okay here. You'll just register with the consulate. And we didn't register anywhere. We had the personal locator beacon. We had a sat phone. We had a BGAN. BGAN looks like a thick laptop, kind of like the Tough Book, except it's sort of cream colored, and you don't know what it is. You open it up and there's nothing inside. It's a satellite. BGAN, Broadband Global Access Network. We had a foldable solar panel that could charge up keep our sat phone charged, and the Tough Book. A change of clothes, something decent, just more of a lighter colored shirt and a top in case we had to look a little more presentable, but we tried to blend in. And of course, there's no way. You have to wear, even if you wore a kit like Lawrence did, it still there would be a sign of something that just wasn't right. But we didn't want to bring attention to ourselves. And so
Yeah.
a lot from Jamie, and the book has a breakdown of some of the things that we learned and things, we went through 39 checkpoints on this trek.
So, okay, so the first place was Jeddah, the first place that you went.
Yeah.
So you fly in to Jeddah, or how do you get there?
Well, yeah. And we took cars and we had different segments that it's not quite like the book. In the book, there's a lot of camel riding. We rode camels 4 days from Aqaba through Wadi Rum, and that's where Lawrence of Arabia was shot, in Wadi Rum. But Aqaba was one of the essential places, because that was the turning point. The fort is the turning point in the war, when Lawrence, it was Lawrence's idea, and he had the backing of the Hawatat warrior Abu Adanteya. And this man had the influence over other tribes to bring them in as they traveled around and behind Aqaba, many, many miles, to approach the fort from behind, because everything was aimed at the bay in the water. It's the Gulf of Aqaba, which is the northern part of the Red Sea,
Mhm.
and it's close to Egypt. Across the water is Egypt, in some places, and the Sinai Peninsula. So we we took it pretty seriously, and from Jamie, simple things, but when you're there and you're doing it, it's the whole training from Jamie was about staying conscious and focused and knowing where you are, always coming to a checkpoint. If they're not in uniform, stop, back up, get out of there, you know, and then just dealing with the individuals at checkpoints. The biggest thing was a surprise, a medikey, a medikey. I'm looking, I will. Yes, you're welcome. Okay. For the most part, we were greeted with surprise, particularly in Jeddah. We got into Saudi. You have to go through the Chamber of Commerce, and at the time, it was corrupt. Everything's kind of corrupt, and Miles is a member of YPO, which is Young Entrepreneurs, YEO, Young Entrepreneurs Organization, became something else, Young Presidents Organization or something. And they had a chapter in Saudi. Because of Money Hunt and a book he wrote, we were invited. We kind of backed into the limelight with the book, and they saw it, and we were invited. And so we had assistance getting into the country because it was impossible. But these young guys are part of the family. Some,
Mm.
and so he got in and he did a presentation. He wore a full kit, a dish dash, and had a cafe, and he was he just did a wonderful thing. The applause. And then they said, okay, why are you really here? No one comes here. Why? You're not selling your book. What's going on? So we're here to follow D.E. Lawrence's path, and the room erupted. What? Iowa? My, do you guys know? Well, yes, my uncle, my grandfather, my this, my that. Positive, negative, charlatan, whatever. But for the most part, we were greeted well, but it was tense, especially when at the crossings or at the checkpoints, the soldiers couldn't speak English.
Hmm.
And so there was a level of threat, the level of, from them, it's like just high alert, everybody like, what? Having to empty our backpack, down tables and explain with hand signs what it is. You know, a guy with his rifle and his barrel moving things around that way. you know, all of them armed.
Were you guys armed?
No, there would be
As
no,
you're as you're going through, you're kind of basically just like at the mercy of whatever these guys want to do. Like, so if you're going through what you said, 39 checkpoints, I think you said. So is does it get easier as it goes along, or is everyone different?
you want to treat everyone as a separate entity, and it's a new day, and you don't know. Um, in Amman, Jordan, it was Easter time. We wanted to go to the Dead Sea and check that out, float in it, put some mud on us, some pictures that we had seen. And so we had a driver that was through Seeds of Peace that they said we'll work out a driver to take you there. And we came to where there's a road that goes north and south along one road along the Dead Sea. We came to the T, and there's a checkpoint, and it was a Jordanian guy, young guy, full flak outfit, goggles, everything. There was a cement stanchion. His assault rifle, was on the stanchion, and he was aiming up. There was a truck in front of us, and so he was finishing up with that, and was going, "Wow." We pull up, and he's like going on the driver with his aiming, and he's like inches, it's a couple feet away, and then going to the back seat and just moving just like that as another person is asking for passport, passport. In front of us, the barrel of the tank that was across the street, but it's right there, all camouflaged, went from truck level, just moved a little bit down to our little dinky car, the barrel of the tank. That was tense. Just knowing that I wanted to know why we got out of there. They said, Americi, very good. Very good. You may go. We pulled out, and I said to the driver, what? Why the tank? This is Jordan, you know? And I looked at the guy. I was saying, why the tank? And then I looked at the guy, and he was just fuming. And he said, them. And he was pointing across the Dead Sea. It was Israel. Them.
Hmm.
Palestinian guy, you know? And so it was the first time we really saw hatred. And then the crossing into Israel was the most tense. We decided, we wanted to go by bus. And yeah, we'd seen the news and buses get blown up. It was like, do you want to? This is, yep, we're going to do it. packed bus, hot,
How many
every
days had you had been there by this point?
20 someone.
So how often are these situations occurring? Like are you in like one every like 2 or 3 days? You're in like a oh, this could be it for us type situation, or are they few and far between?
We had a goal. Everything was a goal. Get to Damascus, get to Damascus. We want to go to Homs, Syria. And that was to see the Crac Chevalier. Lauren said it was the most beautifully preserved Crusader castle,
Mhm.
and indeed it was. Since the revolution, I don't know, the North Tower, it's been bombed by jets
I
since.
didn't mean this would be it for the trip, but like how often are you experiencing these like very tense situations where a guy's pointing a gun at you? Is it like every couple days, or are they like kind of rare?
Well, that was a very pointed time. The weapons are always there, but they're not necessarily pointed at us.
Yeah.
At a checkpoint like that, yeah, but there are people walking around with Tavers or AK-47s,
Hmm.
and we never stayed long anywhere. We were always on the move, and that was another thing with Jamie. Never, if you stay in a hotel or if you stay in you're camping, your movements, never repeat your movements. There's always people watching, always being watched. Everyone's being watched.
Mm. Okay, so you guys are going into Israel on the bus.
Yep.
Okay.
And it would just, if it's the getting to immigration is in the book, and the tension is in the book. We have since in the Middle East been to places like Dubai, and I bring this up because you see the difference between peoples and the situations that are so close. In Dubai, go through immigration, it's a massive hall at the airport, at the international airport. It was when we were there in 2006. And it's always early, early in the morning. It just seems like all the planes and it's, a lot of Germans and French, and it's just all people coming to Dubai to see the magnificence of what is being built and the places to go. And there's a video, and it just shows this spectacular. It shows the desert and black Arabian horses rearing up and beautiful, and like a prince hawking, and he's in his and the wind's blowing. There's hawks, and there's this and that, and there's a voiceover. It's a woman, and it's like you don't hear a woman's voice in Saudi, And in this case, it says, "Welcome to tomorrow." At the Israeli border, what we heard was "Step back," and I'm not. I'm being quiet, but aggressive, attentive, do orders, and concern for their safety, the agent's safeties for what could happen. Everybody's on high alert. The tension was, you could slice it with a knife. It was not pleasant. I mean, it's not supposed to be pleasant, but it was so, you see people's belongings being tossed around and they land on the floor, and it's just very aggressive. And the aggressiveness comes, as you'll see in the book, can come from something that just a woman that was just so attractive, and she is a probably a top-notch commando as you can get. Forget the attractiveness. Listen to what she's saying. Do what she's asking. No games, none.
Is
So
this was the research that you had done beforehand? Did you wade into the Israel like the Zionist type movement and the conflict in was that part of the research that you had done beforehand, or was it more T.E. Lawrence focused?
Well, it included T.E. Lawrence, and all of that is part of T.E. Lawrence. That's the peripheral stuff that's going on and the things that he advised Amir Faisal to
Hmm.
participate in, particularly with Chaim Weizmann, who was the Zionist leader.
Hmm.
And yes, we had a knowledge of that
So
and
was this like a
knowledge of the Bible.
surprise? Not a surprise, but like when you go into Israel,
Yeah.
the you mentioned like that was when you were with the Jordanian checkpoint and he pointed across and he was like, "Oh, it's them." And you mentioned that was like the first time that you saw the hate. That wasn't necessarily a surprise to you then at that point, like, or was it?
Well, we weren't used to people, demonstrating, being so demonstrative openly at
Hmm.
all. But that was, yeah, very clear. We have had, have been for 3 weeks in a place where people, there's no joking, there's no loud voices, there's no, great big laughter. It's quiet. Um, there's no cussing, no drugs, no smell of marijuana or anything like that. You know, drug trafficking, it's death to drug trafficking, and it says it right on your immigration paper.
Mm.
It's right there. And we've got pictures of that. Just going back to Aqaba, the information that I sent you has videos, and there's one on Aqaba, and that is the fort that Miles and I are running through. Miles was leading me, or he had, I forgot how we did it, but it took both of us to do it in film. It was just like the pretending the fort was under attack and where is it coming from? We would look out to the bay and then we look back up to the mountains, and it's to show what was there. It's pretty,
Hmm.
anyway.
So the play had been written already or was being written.
We were seeking at that time in 2006 a playwright, and it looked like we were landing on an individual in the United Kingdom. He's a known quantity. Um, no need to get into him. He loves Lawrence, knew he was prepared. He'd always wanted to write a play. He was in the theatrical world at a high level.
So
And
I want to know, I guess, so you guys come back and you guys have the idea for the play. You guys have found a playwright maybe, but now
Mhm.
we're sitting here about 20 years later and the book is just coming like what ha I guess, well, for lack of a better question, what happened? Like why the delay or why the was it just getting thing you wanted to get things right or like what happened? Because in my head, like having gone through chronologically your story, it's like you guys go and then there's 20 years and now the book. It's like what happened?
Have you ever heard people say that this film has been kicking around for 20 years or
Yeah,
10?
yeah, of course.
Well, that's what it is with this play. We have had four different writers, and right now, um, an Irishman, two Brits, and now an American woman. And she's got it. We're on it. We're now at a point of workshopping it with actors and making very specific changes. And that has taken many years to get to this point. So in between, I mean, I could show you voluminous notes that have been given to the writers, like, this and this and this, and it's all from the history and the level, of what we thought needed to be included, and it has just proven a very challenging project to get a handle on creating a play that will bridge an understanding of how we got into this Middle East mess. Who are pardon me, some of the players. And so right now we're dealing with Gertrude Bell as the focus, with T.E. Lawrence and Amir Faisal and others. And they're trying to reverse Sykes-Picot,
Hmm.
trying to get self-determination at the Paris Peace Conference for the Arabs.
Yeah, I remember in my we talked about the Picot agreement or deal in the episode that I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Do you wanna let's do that then. Let's run through some of the things that you guys wanted to include in the play, or maybe some of the, we'll say, lesser known factors for as how we ended up in the situation that how the Middle East ended up in the
Mhm.
predicament that it's in today. Do you want let's run through do you want to run through some of the things that you guys wanted to make sure that were in the play?
Well, there's like three deals that are going on, and Lawrence was involved with all of them
Hmm.
with Amir Faisal. Amir Faisal is representing the Sharifian Hussein, his father, who was the Sharif of Mecca. And so he basically had the most influence over the Arab tribes. And
Hmm.
this is one of his sons. And another of his sons became the first king of Jordan, Abdullah Hussein. So
Hmm.
Faisal Hussein became the first king of Iraq. But this was after the war in 1921. So before that, during the war, they, meaning the British, wanted the Arab support to fight against the Turks and the Germans. Germans were building a railroad. They were moving in on what the British thought was their turf and would create a problem. The British knew they needed oil for ships. They found out there's oil in Basra, in parts of the then Mesopotamia. The Ottoman Empire was very large and it wasn't called Iraq then. It wasn't called Jordan. Syria was Syria, but there was no Saudi Arabia. It was the Arabian Peninsula. So all these things came into existence after the First World War and not long after. And
Hmm.
so for to get King Hussein to agree, there were a number of pieces that included correspondence with a high level official, McMahon. And it's the Hussein McMahon letters. And it was, if you come and fight with us, for us, King Hussein, we will give you this. We will do this. We will make assurances. And it was never specifics, it was assurances. Ultimately, King Hussein said, and the Turks were saying to Hussein, come with us and the Germans. You're already here. We'll work out a better deal. They say, no, we want independence. We want our own Arab state. And so they went with the Allies. Lawrence was a part of it. And Lawrence, worked with Faisal in the fighting. They had a goal to get to Damascus, which was the seat of the Ottoman Empire, basically. They reached that, we're good, but there's a lot of fighting along the way to get there.
Hmm.
And there was 2 years. And during that time, agreements were being made. The British went to the French and said, look, if we win the war in the Middle East, what do you want? Is there something you want there? And the French say, yeah, we want Syria. We want this land, Syria. It goes back to the Crusades. We want it. It's ours. We're losing. This is horrible. What's going on here? We'll take that. What do you want? Well, we'll take, a piece over here, and we'll support you wanting Syria. But they knew that Faisal and Damascus is in Syria, that's where the center, the government center would be for the Arabs. But they went ahead and signed a 1916 agreement, and they drew the lines in the sand. And it was called the Sykes-Picot, Mark Sykes and Georges Picot. And so they came up with, Mark Sykes had an understanding of the Middle East. Oh, I love the Arabs and this and that. And so they came up with an agreement. Done. It was secret. But then Lawrence gets a whiff of it. And then the Russians have a revolution and they release this information because the Russians were included in this agreement as well. So
Hmm.
in 1917, it becomes known that this is an agreement. And Faisal feels betrayed. And Lawrence says, no, we get to Damascus first. They can't refuse us. And he's always thinking us, because he was so keyed into the Arabs and his desire to see them get there. There's a whole story behind that, but that's what he wanted. And he was being sincere, but he's playing both sides of the fence.
Hmm.
He's
Yeah.
still Brit. And, he's leading this man on. Well, so there was that. And then after the Sykes-Picot, the Zionists, Chaim Weizmann, were looking for a home and they were looking all over the world and different places were thought about. But then Palestine became the focus. And Lord Balfour, who was foreign secretary at the time, was it was something that it was his primary job to get this Zionists in Palestine, and he did. He worked with Rothschild, and this is all very gentlemanly, with the colonial gaze. It's the men that stand at the hearth, you know, and all beautifully dressed with a big portrait of themselves
Yeah.
in them, you know. And so they worked out an agreement, and a part of doing that, Lawrence was aware of it. He had to bring Faisal in, and he wanted to bring Faisal in because he knew for any agreements to go forward, Faisal would have to present himself as a progressive man. And
Hmm.
so Faisal said, "I'll sign this agreement. There's a Faisal-Weizmann agreement that allows the Jews to have a homeland and without obstructing the existing residences. It's not 60 some odd words, this agreement."
Yeah.
And so anyway, Lawrence made convinced Faisal to sign it. Faisal put a codicil at the bottom of it saying, "I agree to this fully as long as the promises made to me by the British people are fulfilled. And if they are not, I withdraw my support." And so Lawrence had a couple of things going on going into the Paris Peace Conference that he felt a great amount of shame because he had great love for the people and a lot of his own skin and blood into the war.
Yeah. The way I heard it put was the Middle East is a much promised land. Um, so yeah, it's all very good insight for people listening. Like, go check some of this stuff out because a lot of the history and kind of the conflict that we're in is a result of agreements made in back rooms and like you said, the gentlemanly people with the hearth saying like, yeah, you can have this and they'll have that and whoever and nobody asked the people who were there except for well, the King Crane Commission went over there and they were like, who do you want to rule you? And they were like, well, we want to rule ourselves. And they're like, okay, well, except for that answer. Um, and then of
But King
course,
and Crane, Eric, excuse me,
yeah,
King and Crane were Americans.
exactly, exactly. So they were Americans, and then the answer that came back was like, well, we'd rather have the U.S. be in charge of the region. And that is another thing that goes against all the things that we've been taught. Like, it happens at the same time, but it's another contradictory from the standpoint of like both things happened or all the things happened, but like none of these things line up, and it's just setting the stage for no, it's ours, no, it's ours, no, it's ours, no, it's theirs, and it's well. That it's kind of like when you trace it back to that, it like it makes sense how we ended up here, um, as unfortunate as it is. But it's like it's it's very, very unfortunate that the situation ended up in this way because it didn't. It feels like it didn't have to be. It's like towards the end of World War One, the British are getting desperate and they're like, "Yeah, whoever helps us, we'll just give you whatever you want over there." And like they'll just promise it to anyone, and they're like, "We'll sort it out afterwards." And it's like, well, that wasn't a good idea. But then, of course, as soon as the League of Nations is formed, and then after World War II, when they want to get out and the UN is formed, they're like, well, the UN can deal with it, and we'll just leave. And so they create the mess, and then they don't have to clean it up. It's I don't know. It's yeah. Part of me wishes I didn't know those things. It's like I don't need to know those
Oh,
things. And
and
then the
then
other part of me is like, no, it's I like I don't know. It's good to dive into those things. So okay, so anyways, keep you were about to say something. Keep going.
no, I think that with the conflict, it is so horrific, the level of hatred and the level of that mankind is willing to the depths to go. October 7th, it just, you know, we're getting a taste when we look at the pictures from California of the fire. I mean, that's fire, and people didn't, not a lot of people died. It wasn't this, but a war where man against man, and they're doing the same kind of devastation along with just horrible atrocities to men, women, and children. How far does one go before it's like enough?
Hmm.
Look how far we went with retribution on retribution. Miles has says in the book, Mags, excuse me, says in the book, he sees 9/11 as a form of retribution. What the United States has done to them. And it's just payback. And of course,
Yeah.
we rallied. And how far do we go with our righteous indignation? When does it stop? If someone hits you, and you go, ow, I'm going to hit you back. Boom, you hit them back, maybe a couple of things, then it's over, right? But this this is elimination,
Yeah.
and we'll find out today. Sunday, it's Sunday, 19th.
Hmm. The
And
ceasefire just went into effect, didn't it? I think.
I haven't looked at my alerts, but I hope
Yeah, I
so.
think the President Trump or President-elect Trump sent an envoy over there, and I think they agreed to a ceasefire. I haven't that happened in the last day or couple days.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed that is able to stay put. But to your point about retribution, it's like nobody wants to be the one that got hit last. They always want to get back and then say, okay, well now we'll stop. And it's like, okay, well it's not it's not like for long term. It feels like a lot of people have very short term views, at
Mm.
least in the U.S. on different things, and they you could probably make an argument that that isn't the case, but to the point of how Miles sees 9/11 as a form of retribution, it's like, yeah, and Osama bin Laden's letter to America, that's what he says. He's like, we're doing this because you are doing all these things over here. And the other
Mm.
thing that I think bothers me is just because you say that's his reason doesn't make it right that that occurred. You can explain something without justifying it. Um, and those, I think that distinction needs to be had, especially as we move forward with kind of dealing with different conflicts, right? We've got Russia, Ukraine, we've got the Israel Gaza situation, and we need to be able to explain why people are doing what they're doing so you can understand and then come to a solution. Because otherwise, if I explain something not to you but to somebody and you say, "Well, are you saying that they should have done that?" It's like, "No, no one ever said that." Like and we need to get to that understanding to come to like you know this, having been working with all sorts of different people. The best way to come to an agreement is if you understand where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with it, but the to
Agree to
understand.
disagree.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree, but it's an agreeing thing. Well, these ideas are in the book, and especially through our young proteges, they become young proteges to Magnus and Finn, Jeremy and Abdu, and they represent their culture. Jeremy is Jewish, and Abdu is Arab, Muslim, and love of family, love of country, love of education, love of food. We have food. We eat all the time in the story. And there are recipes at the end of the book, but it's a part of the commonality that we have. So these fellas have all this, and there's a wonderful conversation in the King David Hotel in Jerusalem with Jeremy. We haven't seen him for a while, and he's trying to come to terms with what he's being asked to do in the IDF, Israeli Defense
Hmm.
Force. And he's a bright, to say innocent, and it's not that he's innocent, it's just that he's a bright young man, and he's willing to look at things, and he's confused. He's just, what do we do? Our trip in 2006 was intense. It was staying focused, being alert, having each other's back, trained. But when you're doing it day in, day out, there wasn't a moment that we weren't on. When we were asked, after being invited to His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Faisal bin Abdulaziz. Now, Faisal was a king, and this is a son of Faisal. And he's a very gentle man. He's a poet that was anonymous for 20 years. And then he put his name to these writings that had been released. And he was an artist as well. He invited us to his majlis. Well, we were invited to his majlis, then introduced to him afterwards. And he said, "Join me for dinner. You will see that we are not all terrorists." And that was something that we ran into a lot. "You're from New York? You're from Colorado? Wow, why are you here?" We never thought we would see anyone because of they weren't all from Saudi.
Yeah.
They say, but it was like the terrorists. And so after 9/11, another horrific day, that's when after years of working on the play, having on and off and lives, we're busy. And it was Miles that said, "We got to write it now." We had started with ideas right after we got back. We have many, many pictures, lots of nice video, whether it's high res right now or not, we can have that
Yeah.
adjusted,
Yeah.
you know. But we had so much in our heads that we started. I mean, it was right after the 7th, maybe the next week. I mean, it was right then. And we just, Mal says, I've got an idea for a start. We've got to figure out how to start it. And then he went, "We just did the running with the bulls. Let's meet a kid." And he came up with this idea, and it was just wonderful. And then we feed each other. But Miles absolutely got this. He had something in his head that was so clear after all these different approaches to a play, you know?
Hmm.
So we went to town on it. We just went to town on it. And we got it published in March. I don't know, it was the 8th or the 12th of March, 2023. So we just took a few months and poured ourselves into it. But again, we had so much already just had to come out. And the recall on the trip to this day from 2006, 20 years later, is like instant.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you that. It's been 20 years, but it seems like it's still like you still remember it like it was yesterday. I think part of it, I would imagine, is because the experience was so different from anything that you've done, and like you were just switched on and focused all the time that it's there.
And when you experience that with another person, a bud, it's like it's your tail end's hanging out there, and it's being alert. And so I can smell things. I can see. I mean, I don't know how many traditional meals we had because we were they. people were honored that we were there. They would say, dinner, we have dinner together, you know? And so there would be goat, and there's customs. We learned the customs of how to eat properly. I learned not to spit. I mean, at one point I spit, and my interpreter said, "No, not spit." I go, okay, okay. I mean, I don't usually go around spitting, but it was just something I just, just kind of did.
Yeah.
Never spit. At the Majlis, uh, which is where the prince holds court. He holds a meeting with the sheikhs that are of tribes that are in the local area in that state or province. They come in, and any complaints or any things and problems that need to be handled, it's not complaints, problems that need to be handled are addressed with the prince. And they talk about Hajj. At the one we went to was after we did the trek and when we were closer to producing this big event there, a sea festival. It was the questions were on Hajj. This is when the prince asked us afterwards to join him for dinner, and it was I forgot my train of thought with Prince Khalid, but it was there. People were gracious, and the food, and it was the commonalities are in the need for love, family, and they're not thinking about the government.
No.
They're thinking about their home and their family and serving Allah. People pray 5 times a day. That's not a joke. And they're not, like, oh, we got to do this. It's not westernized. It's like, you're going to go? No, really? We can skip it. We'll do it. No, it's 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Eid and the different fasting times, yeah, they go. There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of people don't want to fast all the whole day, but many do. The influence of funds and like going to a supermarket, not a mall, and they do have malls, even in Saudi, and they have gorgeous hotels. They have Four Seasons and things like that, and very lovely, lovely places. And the culture is maintained. Women are separate, and we've been in homes. We've not met women, moms, or wives in their homes, but we know from the men the women rule. Period. Are you kidding me? My wife, I love her. How many wives do you have? Two. And it's like, really? You really do? Yes, well, you see, you can have wives here, but you have to be able to take care of the families. But that was rare, but they do. And they want boys. The question to us was, you met, yes. You have family, yes, yes. How many boys? I have 3 girls and 3 boys. you know. So
I think the point that you made though about we're all just people at the end of the day. We still need love, still need family, still just looking to take care of each other. I don't know. I feel like that's a good way to wrap it up on a positive. We talked about definitely some very heavy stuff, of course, but I think it was a great conversation. Tell the people where they can find the book and the other stuff that you guys are working on.
the book is published on Amazon, and it is in a paperback form and a Kindle form and an Audible book. The narrator was very fortunate to get Eduardo Ballerini, is a most accomplished, very wonderful reader of books, and he's won very high awards for his work. And to get him, it was a real coup. It was a real wonderful thing to be able to get him. So Amazon, I am on LinkedIn. Um, as Wells Tad Jones, and Miles has a link tree, Miles Spencer's link tree, and that will lead to all of his socials. He's very much involved with social. He has quite a following, 25,000 plus people. And that's because of his work and his very good work and the respect that he has in his field. But the information that I sent you, all of that is in the email. Maybe if you need to refer to it, it's right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I'll put all the stuff for the people listening. I'll put all the links and stuff in the description, of course. Um, any last nickels before we get you out of here?
Well, I think that I've got to ask your next guest.
That's a surprise. Tell me offline. Tell me after we're done.
Oh, it's a surprise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they
Yes,
don't get to know.
glad I didn't, of course. I liked the question that the gentleman was asking. He's clearly a thinker, and that was fun. I've enjoyed talking,
Yeah,
Eric. Thank you.
likewise.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And how soon does this roll around? This get
Well, let's do the wrap up and then we can talk about all the logistics and stuff
sure.
offline.
Okay.
Um, any last nickels or you said all
No,
you needed to?
I think so. There's so much I from talking with people and reviews that I hope that people, if there's any interest, that they look into the the agreements or they do a little dive on some of this. Certainly, the book has a way, is a primer to it that's entertaining. And I thank you again for the opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. For those of you listening, if you're interested, links and all that will be in the description as always, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thanks. Bye bye.